The following is a GoPowerCat.com production.
It is 35 degrees in Morgantown. It's 56 in Fort Worth. It's 25 in Manhattan, Kansas. And here at Studio 73, it is 54 in Frisco, Texas. And this is the Big Insiders.
Welcome to the Big Insiders, your Big 12 sports show, presented by Synergy Financial Partners. Now let's go to booming North Texas, home of Studio 73. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Welcome, everybody, to a new edition of the Big Insiders. Again, this is Big B, Brien Hanley. Welcome in Jamie Plunkett here, and also Mike Casaza. Hopefully I got that right and didn't butcher it too much, from TCU and West Virginia, respectively. Guys, what is going on, fellas?
What's going on, Brian, man? Excited to be a part of the show today.
It's funny, we're navigating a difficult basketball seasons in entirely bizarre capacities, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. And just to go right into that, Mike, obviously with Bob Huggins, being ceremoniously let go, what is going on in West Virginia? What's kind of the landscape there basketball wise?
Man, it's not great. It's certainly not up to the standard, whatever that might have been, but certainly
Right.
Huggins, maybe didn't have the strongest number of years in a row, but you expected a certain level of success and probably more importantly, effort. On the defensive end or rebounding, and those are kind of hallmarks that are missing right now. They've honestly been snake bitten. Like, they had some players who were suspended by the NCAA for something that happened in Arizona. They had some eligibility issues that the NCAA eventually reneged on. They've had injuries to maybe their best player, so they haven't had their full transfer portal, like number 2 class in the country. They haven't had that full lineup together yet. So when they do, that'll be maybe 2 games from now. It's kind of like that's the starting line. Unfortunately,
Right.
That's going to be several games into the Big 12 season. The damage may already be done for, never mind an NCAA bid, but it could be even hard to get above 500, get to the NIT. And this team really did have visions about, making it run in March. And who knows if they even get to play March basketball.
Right. Yeah, it's been a struggle. I've seen them. And just like you said, people aren't used to West Virginia basketball struggling. Whether they're in the Final Four or whatever the case may be, people are used to seeing West Virginia play really, really good basketball and competing in the Big 12. And as we know, Big 12, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion, it's the best conference for basketball in the country. I don't think there's a whole lot of debate about that right now.
No, it's proven every night too. Like, it's ridiculous how hard it is to win on the road. Like, it's
absolutely.
I think there's 33 teams that have won 10 or more in a row at home, and 7 are in the Big 12. That's not going to last, but that shows how hard it is, I think, and that's not going to go anywhere either.
Yep. It's hard to win on the road in conference too, right? Conference 7 and 18 road teams are in the Big 12 so far this year, with I think I saw 7 ranked teams that have been upset by unranked teams in conference play already on the road. So, West Virginia participated in that, right? With Raekwon coming back and knocking off Texas. And I think you're starting to see a little bit of good momentum from the Mountaineers, which is nice.
It'd be good, but the thing is, they're making this progress with, finally getting some guards in the lineup, and, they lose their 6'11" center, Jesse Edwards, and he was about a double-double guy. And they brought him in. That was like the prize, their recruiting class, so their transfer portal class. He breaks his wrist the first day they get all these guys back from suspension. And Battle never even played in that game. So, they haven't had their full group together, like I said. But what's interesting now is that, they're hopeful to get Edwards back 2 games maybe. We'll see. He's right at 4 weeks and a day right now, and it's supposed to be 4 weeks from the surgery. But they become, so guard-oriented. And so I would even say outside in, outside out, if that makes sense. Bounce it and shoot it. Well, now you're going to put the 6'11" guy in the middle who's really good with his back to the basket. And you gotta reinvent the wheel a little bit again too. And like I said, it's so late, it's really hard to progress when you keep taking these steps sideways or backwards. And they don't have any choice but to do that right now. You got to incorporate your best player, and it's just totally different strokes than what they're doing right now.
Yeah. And kind of what we mentioned as far as basketball upsets and stuff that are going on. UCF coming again, pulling off a huge upset, this time on the road. At Texas. And look, in case you guys didn't know, we're not going to talk a whole lot about OU and Texas just because we're focusing on the new Big 12. Yeah. But Rodney Terry, I think what he did last night, if it's good for Texas when they win to throw up the horns up symbol, if guys are doing it to you when you get beat, you just got to take it. And if you don't like it, don't lose the game. That's my philosophy. If you don't like something that somebody's doing, I mean, they didn't punch you or push you or do anything. All they did was give back to you what you give to them, and they got beat. And I think Johnny Dawkins and UCF, I don't know he's trying to keep his job. And those kids apparently want him to keep his job because they are battling. And I don't know how great Texas is. I know they're pretty good. To go on the road and get a win like that, that just shows how tough this league is.
It really does. And, I think I take what Ronnie Terry said after the game with a pretty big grain of salt about the class of Central Florida when he was the grown adult man standing in the handshake line, yelling and cussing at kids. So, I think there's a little bit of a different perspective there. But I agree. I think Central Florida is playing incredibly tough brand of basketball right now. The way they took down Kansas at home, an incredible student section. They've got a fantastic atmosphere in that stadium to go on the road, like you said, and knock out Texas. It's just another feather in the cap for Big 12 basketball. One of the teams that everyone kind of expected to come in and maybe be a little bit weaker is knocking off some of the bigger branded names in the conference already this season.
I tuned out. I was watching the score, and it was Kansas at UCF, and it was, I think, 35-19 in the first half. And I was like, well, that's kind of going how I expected. And then I checked the scores later on, and UCF won, and I went back and I watched it. UCF stomped Kansas in that second half. Like they have guys who aren't scared, and some are transfers and some are guys who've been there. But I think they realize there's like an opportunity here to do something that maybe people don't expect. And certainly the schedule. I think if you're a UCF or some of these new schools, maybe Cincinnati, BYU, less so Houston because they played some March basketball and high stakes. You really get up for getting a chance to play against Texas or Kansas. And I think that, we talk about how, these schools that come into the Big 12 for football, they're going to have to get used to the depth disadvantages. Like I covered West Virginia when they came into the Big 12, and like they had Geno Smith, Tavon Austin, Stedman Bailey. They had elite offensive talent. They were very good on defense too, but they just did not have 23 through 44. They didn't have that second line of players. And I can remember thinking, wow, these backup defensive lines of the Big 12 are so good. I was not accustomed to backup defensive lines covering the Big East. It didn't happen. So football, it's an adjustment, but you're talking 85 people, 25 in a class back then. And how much of a difference can one or two people make? Totally different basketball, especially that transfer portal. And if you get guys who are coming into play and now they get a chance after being in the American for a couple of years or, being what would have been BYU, the Mountain West, I think.
Yep.
Now you're playing Big 12 basketball and you're getting them on the road or at home. You're on ESPN or ESPN Plus. That's big time there too. So I think that some of these schools are realizing that it's different than football. Like football, you can roll it out there sometimes and you're going to win on your depth and your talent because you're a Big 12 school against a group of five, glorified, but still true. When you come into the Big 12 or even a Big East school that came in the Big 12, it's very different in basketball. I just think that the margins are much bigger. Because you can shrink the margins of basketball. It's just one player, two players. And I think you're seeing that right now. And it's a big difference for some of the schools. Like Houston's different. That's an elite program. But, BYU, were they 13th in the preseason poll? Look at them now.
Somewhere around 13, 15.
They were number 2 in KenPom, and they haven't really lived up to be a number 2 in the country, but they've been pretty good. Cincinnati's had some good wins. That's a good program when they're humming. And, UCF has some pedigree with their coach, from Duke, but that's been different. It kind of maybe lost some luster at Stanford, and he's getting it back a little bit. But I think those schools are realizing, maybe more importantly, the other teams are realizing that they do have talent, they can play. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the incumbents adjust as opposed to how the newcomers adjust.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I thought coming into the league as far as basketball. Football, I thought it was going to be a little bit different. There would be an adjustment period, and there was. But in basketball, I just kind of thought, I don't know. Just what you said, Mike, it doesn't take a lot to be good. It doesn't take a lot to adjust. You get one or two guys, and you can figure some stuff out. It used to be, back in the old days in football, if you get an option quarterback and you're doing that kind of stuff, you can run with if you get a good quarterback. You can't do that anymore in football. But basketball hasn't changed. You get two good players on your team, you can go to a Final Four. And that's just how it works. And I've seen it time and time again. And this league is just unforgiving. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. This league is just unforgiving. And with the new teams coming in, it just got even more unforgiving because UCF, where you thought, okay, you know what? That's a win. We can go there or they come to us. That's a win. And it's turning out if you don't bring your A game, you lose. And for me, as somebody that's going to cover the Big 12, I love that, Jamie. I love that aspect of it.
Well, it's just been so much fun to watch because all of these games seem like they're coming down to the wire day in and day out. I mean, as somebody who covers TCU, you know, the 2-point loss at Kansas to open conference play, a 9-point win over number 9 Oklahoma, a 1-point win over number 2 Houston, and then a 4-point overtime loss at Cincinnati. These have been just absolute bangers of basketball games to open up the conference slate, not to mention Baylor losing at Kansas State the other night. You've got road teams, no matter the ranking, they're going to get everybody's best shot every single night. And I think it speaks to the caliber of player, but also the caliber of coaching in the conference top to bottom. I think the Big 12, beyond just being the best basketball conference in the country, has the best list of coaches top to bottom. And that's a huge reason why we're seeing them compete at such a high level across the board right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I bring up Texas again? I know we're not supposed to, but
no, absolutely.
Maybe people can delight in this. Lose to West Virginia, not great, and then lose last night. 1-3 in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the coaching decision was the most popular, either to get rid of Chris Beard or to keep Rodney Terry. But let's just say that it wasn't uniform, right? Here's our next 6. Are you ready? Baylor's at home. They go to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's undefeated at home.
Mm-hmm.
BYU. That's not a fun trip. Houston is at Texas, but Houston's Houston. At TCU, and you guys know, like, Texas goes to TCU,
they lose.
Yeah, and not only that, but like TCU gets up for that game.
That's right.
And then they play Iowa State. That's their next 6. Baylor ranked, Oklahoma ranked, BYU ranked, Houston ranked, TCU ranked, Iowa State probably won't be ranked. Are they done?
I mean,
I'm not saying they're going to be 1-9, but how many wins are they getting out of that, and how close are they getting to 500? They're 1-3 right now, and this is like a Sweet 16 caliber expectation. I'm not sure they have a Sweet 16 roster, but like that schedule, it's absurd. How do they get out of that?
Here's the thing. I don't put a lot of stock in voters a lot of times because there's no way that they can see every single team play. No. But I feel like voters got to see Texas. Texas was 14-2 and ranked 22nd in the country a week ago. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many 14-2 teams at a Power 5 school like that are ranked 22nd in the country. I think there's a reason for that. I think people know. I just don't think Texas is good. And maybe it's the coaching. Like you mentioned, maybe at that place, maybe the coaching isn't up to snuff. I don't know. But I've seen him several times. I saw him struggle against a Louisville team who we know is god-awful. I just don't know how good Texas actually is. And to answer your question, Mike, I'll just say it. Yeah, I think they are, because I think they lose 4 of those games. Easily, they're going to lose 4 of those games.
Well, it's tough, right? I mean, you've been the big blue blood in the conference for so long. You've wanted to have everything be about you in the conference for so long, to the point where you were dissatisfied with the quality that you had cultivated around you, and now you're dipping. Right. Correct. And so everybody has a chip on their shoulder when it comes to the University of Texas in this conference. And so, yeah, they're going to get everybody's best shot, especially from the in-state schools, especially from, like you mentioned, TCU, who loves beating Texas in Fort Worth, and Houston, who's going to get probably one of their only shots at playing the University of Texas outside of tournament time in the near future. And so, yes, they're going to get their best shots. I'm with you both, too. I'm not sure how good this roster actually is. They're 2-4 in quad 1 and quad 2 games already this season. Mm-hmm. Their best win entering Big 12 play was like a neutral site win against LSU. And so, you know, I'm not sure that the caliber of non-conference really gave us a good picture of what this team is capable of.
Correct.
And, I know I kind of dissed him earlier. I like Rodney Terry a lot. He's an excellent recruiter. I think one of his challenges throughout his career has been getting teams to play at the level that they're maybe capable of. And so this is going to be a really big challenge, not only for the team, but for Rodney Terry to show that I am the man for this job. And the university was right in hiring me as Chris Beard's successor.
Couldn't agree with you more. Could not agree with you more. Jamie, let me ask you this. Well, first off, funny story at the airport. First game of the year, football, we run into Jamie Dixon at the airport. He was coming back from the West Virginia Pitt game, and I think he was going recruiting, and me and my wife run into him. He's standing in front of us in the line, and he had on a purple shirt, And of course, she doesn't know. And she just, hey, you going? Because we were going to the K-State game. Hey, you going to the K-State game? And I'm like, no, April. He's the head basketball coach at TCU. Oh, I'm sorry. And he just laughed. But Jamie Dixon coming back there, he's an alumni there. I believe he's an alumni there, coming back to TCU. I mean, it seems that he's got the program rolling. I mean, it had hit some hard times. I mean, TCU had been good for a while, hit a little bit of hard times, but he's got that program rolling. Kind of give us a little lowdown on what you see there, and moving forward with the rest of the season.
I think one of the things that Jamie Dixon did an incredibly good job of doing right when he got back on campus as the head coach was convincing people that basketball mattered. Because for so long in TCU's history, it had been football and then baseball was the number 2 sport. Mm-hmm. And basketball had fallen kind of by the wayside. The facilities weren't up to par. The team had just come off of an 0-18 run through Big 12 play. They were not recruiting well. They were not performing well. And everyone had kind of just said, well, that's going to be, that's it for TCU basketball. We're going to focus on football and baseball. Dixon came in and right away convinced people that basketball was going to matter and that it was going to compete. He won the NIT in his first season as the head coach. He got to the NCAA tournament in his second season. And since then, he's doing an incredibly good job of roster construction and management in this era of the transfer portal. Mike, you mentioned West Virginia's number 2 transfer portal class this year. TCU's class was number 3. They brought in Jameer Nelson Jr., Avery Anderson, Ernest Uday, Trey Tennyson, a sharpshooter from A&M Corpus Christi, who's been shooting the lights out of the ball this year. And so what he's done is he's able to bring in a bunch of really talented guys, get them to buy into a system and say, you and you and you and you were all scorers at your last gig, but here we're part of a unit, and this is your role, and this is your role, and this is your role. And I've been so impressed with his ability to convince guys to buy in, and that's why they're playing at such a good level over these last few years. I also think that he's not satisfied with where TCU has gotten to, because he's still the best finish he's had in Big 12 play is 9-9, right? He hasn't had a winning season in conference play yet. He wants to get there. He thinks this is the unit to do it. He's fully bought in on this team being 10 deep, and I think he's right to believe that. But I mean, he had a media availability earlier today where he said, I know we've come a long way as a program, but we've still got a lot more we want to accomplish. And he said, to quote, I'm not satisfied yet. And so I think that's a really nice thing to hear in a head coach who's been in the program for 8 seasons now, who's been a head coach for a really long time, to know that he's still hungry for better and for more. I think that's a good signal for TCU basketball moving forward.
I think what's cool about him, and I have perspective on this, I can bookend it a little bit, because West Virginia Pitt is a fierce rivalry. Basketball, football, baseball. I mean, whatever they play, they don't like each other. And a lot of these kids in different sports, they grow up playing against each other in AAU or summer baseball, whatever. They know each other that way. Anyways, basketball is a big one here. Backyard brawl, twice a year in the Big East, always a rock fight. When you think about some of the, like where Dixon was on the bench at Pitt initially as an assistant, Ben Howland. And think about Ben Howland's style of basketball. His defense is rebounding. You're winning games 48-42. Right. And then some of his best players, were New York City kids or were Pittsburgh players. And again, defense, rebounding. And they get to the Final Four. They're playing really well, like that style. I think it wears on you after a while when you just have to continually grind and grind and grind. And I don't know if he was just wearing out at Pitt, if it was just getting too hard to move that boulder, if it just burnt out. I don't know. But that guy's way too good not to be coaching. And
absolutely,
where is he going to go? Is he going to go to Arizona? Is he going to go to Arizona State? What's going to happen? And then all of a sudden, things don't work out with Trent Johnson, who I think everybody liked, and just didn't work out. And that's not a guy who doesn't know how to coach, but TCU's difficult, which kind of gets to my point here. Dixon ends up at his alma mater. That's a restart, and you're refreshed. And then, and Jamie, you can help me out with this too, but they play exciting basketball. This is not back to the basket, throw it on the block, hook shots. This is not DeJuan Blair, Chevy Troutman. They're always one of the best fast break point teams in the country. They get the ball off the rim or out of bounds, and they run. They try to get possession after possession. They try to bury you in points and pace and possessions, and that's totally different than what I'm used to watching him play. And that makes it easier probably to get players nowadays, because what do you want to do? Do you want to win 48-42? or do you want to win
Yeah.
92-72, right? Would you want to run and run and run? Or do you want to step back and guard for 30 seconds for 45 possessions a game? No, it's easier, right? You're talking to kids this way. And like the fact that he learned that language, he's got assistants that go that way now too. You know, some young perspective, I think sometimes that's good. And you in this game, you can teach old dogs new tricks. I think sometimes. I don't mean that as an insult to him. I like Jamie a lot, but it's really cool to see somebody who has just come around. You know, he's turned the corner now. He's rounding second, going to third, and his eyes are wide. You can tell he's got a totally different thing going, and like a confidence too. Like Tennyson, for example, you're going to live in the transfer portal on acquisitions like that. Like when you can manipulate those margins, you can find a guy who maybe not a lot of people want, but you know he's going to fit my system. He's going to shoot it, be accurate. He's going to play fast pace. That works. Maybe no one wants him. Maybe not enough people saw what he saw, but you get those to click, and all of a sudden people buy in, you know, from not just inside, but outside too. And everybody listens. Everybody wants to be part of it too. And to see him do that, that's really cool. That's a good story, I think.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it too, because the way he's been able to kind of craft this roster has garnered a lot of support from an NIL perspective as well.
Yes.
Because they trust him to go and get the right guys that fit the system, fit the program, and will continue to progress things for TCU. One of the things that I do want to note as well, yes, they are the best fast break team in the country this year, but what he has been able to do to progress the half court offense is the reason that they're competing in some of these Big 12 games, because Houston and Oklahoma specifically did a phenomenal job of shutting off the fast break for TCU. And early in the season, as guys were still figuring out their roles, figuring out how they fit into the system, they weren't a very good half court offense. Their efficiency numbers were really low. They were reliant on the fast break to generate most of their offense. Now, I mean, you go back and you watch this game against Houston, they had 8 fast break points. If you had told me before the year that they were going to play the number one efficient defense in the country, they were only going to get 8 fast break points, I was going to count that as an L. But they won on the boards. They shot 55% in the second half against Houston with 2 fast break points in that half.
Wow.
Because of the ball movement, their ability to go inside to Ernest Uday, and then opening up some shots for Trey Tennyson late. He hit a couple big corner threes that really kind of put that thing over the edge for TCU. So I think beyond just the kind of adapting to the modern game, his ability to make some in-game adjustments and help guys understand their role in-game has been a big point of TCU's success this year.
How steamed was Jamie after the Kansas game?
I was shocked with how not steamed he was, at least publicly. Because you know he's got a reputation, right? Like he gets on refs. We see it in games a lot. He's pretty relentless when it comes to communicating with the officials. But after the Kansas game, he talked about rebounding. He says we could have done a lot better job on the board. He's like, we gave up 15 offensive rebounds today. That's not okay. And then the next day, the Frogs were back in the gym. They were doing rebounding drills in practice. And what happens? They've rebounded they've been a much better rebounding team the last 3 games. He did not want to talk about the flagrant foul. He did not want to talk about any of that stuff. And again, against Cincinnati on Tuesday, Micah Peavy catches an elbow late in the second half. He's bleeding from his face. You think, oh, this is a situation we just saw 10 days ago at Kansas. This is going to be a flagrant one. There was no flagrant called. It was Cincinnati's ball after a jump ball. And you know, he didn't address the situation after that game either. He says, you know, we missed free throws down the stretch. We had an opportunity to hit some open shots. But we just didn't make shots late in the game. And so I think he's done a really good job this year of keeping the team focused, because he understands the gauntlet that is the Big 12 schedule. And if you take a day to lament something that happened yesterday, that means you're not getting prepared for the next team coming in. And so he's done a really good job of keeping this team focused so far this year. So I've been impressed, because in the past he's been able to cut loose a little bit, and he's let us know how he feels about officiating, but he has changed in that way this year, which is impressive.
Gotcha. Guys, we're going to take a quick break here to just give a shout out to our partners, Synergy Financial Partners. So we will be back here in just a quick second.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the mission is to change the way Americans plan for their financial future. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
All right. Good stuff so far, guys. I appreciate you guys taking the time. One thing that, Jamie, that I've noticed, I've lived here for 12 years, and one thing about Texas basketball as a whole, Mike touched on it just a second ago, talking about how the style of play that Jamie Dixon had was based on where he was recruiting from and where he was at. Texas basketball has changed in the 12 years that I've lived here in Dallas, is that it was always on the kind of the outside, and everybody knew that, yeah, Texas is about football, but I think the overall national landscape wasn't there. It's different now. People recognize that Texas, yeah, they play basketball there. Oh, by the way, there's a lot of people in Texas, and they play really good basketball there. I think that has helped, especially TCU getting into the Big 12. I think all of that has helped. So the recruiting base, and because, Mike, you're 100% right. You play to where you recruit from, and that was the style of Pittsburgh, New York, tough style basketball. We're going to slam it in your face. We're not going to take a lot of jump shots. We're going to drive the basketball, and that's just the way it is. It's a little different. First of all, basketball is different. That's number one. Sure. But two, it's a little different as far as Texas just having different style of players and him being able to dip into a different type of pool. I think that has helped a lot. And I could be wrong, but just from the outside looking in, I think that's kind of what it is.
I think you're absolutely right. And, he's done a phenomenal job of recruiting DFW. TCU, I think we can agree, exists in one of the most talent-rich environments in the country for both football and basketball.
Absolutely.
And so that's a huge benefit, is being able to recruit some of these kids and say, you don't have to go very far from home to play elite college Power 5 basketball. And he made that pitch really successfully to a guy like Mike Miles. He's made that pitch successfully to guys like Alex Robinson, who's transferred back in, Kenrich Williams, who came up from Waco. Some of these guys who have historically been some of the better players in the program. They've come to TCU because of the location, and now they have a head coach who understands that, hey, if I get these guys playing at this level, we're going to be able to almost put a fence around DFW and keep some of the most talented guys in the Metroplex to play their college ball. Just look at his high school recruiting rankings over the last couple of years, and you'll see the progression that he's made in that area.
Yeah, good deal. So moving on and just touching base on you guys they're the new teams that are coming into the conference. Mike, I know you guys are kind of out there by yourself and had been out there by yourself. You get a new partner coming in with Cincinnati, UCF. We talked to somebody yesterday from Cincinnati. Is it important that you get that? It's almost kind of a natural rivalry just from, in the old Big East days. Like I said, I grew up in Louisville, so I was a Louisville fan my entire life. I get that rivalry. I understand it. Is it the same way going both ways from your side?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think that they probably yearn for have somebody close. Like if you're closest, I hate even saying the word geographic rival in the Big 12 is Iowa State, and it's like 900 miles away.
Right.
Like you replace Pitt for Thanksgiving weekend with Iowa State, like you're going to have more stuffing in turkey. You're not going to put down what you're doing and watch that game. You're just not. You're not going to travel to do it. You're not going to have family and friends over to do it.
Right.
So that's a good thing, I think. It would be spicier if Bob Huggins were still the basketball coach. That was the plan. So that would be one thing too. Until they started playing each other and beating each other. Like I was looking at this, we were going over the road thing, and I was trying to figure out West Virginia's road woes in the Big 12 in basketball. They're like 35-64 in Big 12 road games now since they've been in the league. But they're only 0-3 against Cincinnati, so they don't even play that much. Like they were in the Big East for a couple of years when it started to kind of fall apart. So they don't have a lot of familiarity with each other. It's just not there. And the football game this year is really one-sided, so it's not there yet. You really again, you can force feed Iowa State, West Virginia, and make it a rivalry because you put on rivalry weekend, you make it a last game of the season, you put it on Thanksgiving, whatever. It's not going to really do anything until you start, beating each other. Now, granted, the basketball teams cooperated because they got in like karate fights.
Yeah,
like people forget this, but like they were like kicking dudes in the chest and flagrant fouls and like lots of smack talk, and that became a pretty fierce game. West Virginia, Iowa State basketball. That's toned down a little bit because both teams had down years, and when one was up, the other was down. And now they don't even have a rivalry. So like even like UCF is new. They don't have much of a history with them. They played there. I don't even think they played at UCF in basketball. They played there twice in football before this year. But it's a little bit easier to get there. They have two other schools in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. They had none. They were always losing an hour when they traveled. And just anecdotally here, like getting to Oklahoma, it took them. They had to leave earlier than expected because of snow. They couldn't fly out of their airport, which is 45 minutes away. They had to fly the one in Pittsburgh, which is like an hour and a half by bus. That got delayed. It didn't take them 10 hours. They couldn't even practice the day before the game because they were so like fatigued from travel. and they lay an egg last night. And that happens to them a couple times a year because they travel so much. So is every team going to have travel troubles? Sure. But when you travel as much and as often as West Virginia does, when there isn't a Stillwater to Norman trip, when there isn't a Manhattan to Lawrence trip, you don't have that, right? So if you're flying everywhere, it's 2.5 hour charters, plus that bus ride to and from the airport. It snows a lot here, ice, cold. They always have these things happen, and it derails them at least once or twice or 3 times a year. It happened. I mean, they lost last night because they're not very good, but they also lost because they weren't prepared and they didn't have the ample time and they looked fatigued and they were slow to 50-50 balls, and that happens. Well, if you take out 2 or 3 of those games a year now you're going to Cincinnati once and UCF once. That's a little bit easier now because you're not having one of those long road trips. You're taking it for a much easier one. I think they're more excited about that. And perhaps they can travel to a game, get in the car and drive 4 hours to Cincinnati. Perhaps go have a long weekend in January and February in Orlando. That's much more inviting than a long weekend in Ames. That's not great. Provo's probably the same thing. I don't think anybody's jazzed about going to Utah because it's so far away, but it's pretty cool. So new horizons, I think that'll be good, but also just having a little bit easier when it comes to basketball in particular. Football travel, I don't think it's that hard. It's a couple times a year. It's one day. Basketball, you're talking 9 road games, couple times a week sometimes. That adds up on West Virginia. It has for more than a decade now.
Gotcha. I'm just disappointed Arizona State's AD is going to retire before he gets to travel to Morgantown, because I would have really liked to see the fan base welcome him in after the comments he made.
Yeah, that was. I mean, you talk about tacky at best. I mean,
classless, Rodney Terry said.
Classless.
Yeah. Well, the one thing about it is, I mean, has he been to Morgantown for a football game? That would be the first thing that I would say. Have you ever been there for a football game? Because I have, and I can tell you, it's a crazy atmosphere.
It's a good time.
Yeah, it's a great time. That's right. So I don't know what he's talking about. Maybe they're not used to that in Arizona State. Maybe they're not used to crazy and fun atmospheres when it comes to that. But they're going to get a dose of it. I can tell you that, because Big 12 football and the atmospheres. I mean, a lot of college towns. It's a big deal. Now, Jamie, look, I don't want to beat your head in. There's a lot of K-State fans that are tuning in. They are begging, just begging for me to ask this question about what happened to the women's basketball game yesterday. Yeah. I'll just let you take the floor and just give us what you got or what you can, and we'll go from there.
So first and foremost, it's an unfortunate situation, right? I don't think I've ever seen a situation play out like this where a team has had to cancel games and hold open tryouts because their roster has been so devastated by injuries, because that's really, truly what it is, right? They lost 3 players at the beginning of the year to injuries. They had 1 player step away from personal reasons who has tried to keep that really private, so she has not announced anything like that. So you're down 4 of an already limited roster because TCU only had 14 scholarship players, not 15. They didn't have any walk-ons because of the coaching transition that happened this offseason. They only had 2 freshmen come in out of the expected 4-player freshman class because of the coaching transition. They lost multiple transfers to the portal because of the coaching transition. Granted, they brought in some really talented players as well. Sedona Prince, Jaden Owens, Madison Connor. So they were already only working with 14 scholarship players, all of whom were active. Both freshmen weren't going to redshirt with the intention of, we need bodies this year. Right. So you lose 3 players right out of the gate to injury. You lose another player for personal reasons, so you're down to 10. You lose Sedona Prince 2 weeks ago, you're down to 7. You lose Jaden Owens over the weekend, you're down to 8. You're down to 7 with Jaden Owens going down. You're down to 6 with Deja Turner having season-ending surgery this week. Jeez. And then 2 of the 6, one is a freshman point guard named Victoria Flores, who tore her ACL her senior year of high school and is still working her way back, so she's on a minutes restriction. You've got Sydney Harris, who was hurt to begin the year and has only played the last 3 games. She's averaging 8 minutes a game, and she's still on a minutes restriction. And so 2/3 of your remaining players are on 10 minutes or less minutes restrictions. And so you really, truly only have 4 fully healthy, fully active players ready to rock. Now it's a tough, were there opportunities maybe in the fall to add a few walk-ons to quietly maybe get some more bodies on the roster? Sure. I don't know that you can predict the level of injuries that they've had so far this season. Absolutely. One thing I know is that I don't envy Mark Campbell's position right now, because he's got to find a way to put a roster together. They've canceled the next 2 games, but the expectation is that on Tuesday, when Central Florida comes to town, they're picking the rest of the season back up and they're running. So we'll see how things go. They're having open tryouts today and tomorrow. I know that there are some conversations with other coaches of women's sports to see, hey, does anybody have some basketball experience? Maybe we can get some student athletes who are already on campus, already in game shape, right? Like to maybe ease the transition a little bit. But they're pulling out all the stops to put a roster together. And it's really unfortunate. I've seen, and I get the K-State perspective of it too, especially the K-State fans who live in DFW, maybe bought tickets to the game already, disappointed that they're not going to be able to see their number 10, I think it's number 7 ranked team in the country play. Like, I understand the disappointment there. I also chuckle when I see they're dodging us kind of stuff that I've been seeing on social media, because I can guarantee you that there is no college coach at any level in the country who's going to cancel a game because they're scared of an opponent. So,
and if there is, they need to be fired immediately.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And so it's a terribly unfortunate situation. The only other time I've seen anything like this at TCU was either a COVID situation in that crazy COVID year, or I think volleyball had the flu run through their team last year and they didn't have enough eligible players to play a game. But other than that, I've never seen this level of injury in any program that I've covered. It's really disheartening in a way, and also disappointing for the players who have either suffered season-ending injuries or are healthy and can't play because they don't have enough teammates left to go out there and play the sport that they love. And so it's a challenging situation. It's one that was completely unexpected 2 weeks ago when this team was 14-0 and ranked 25th. But it's just, sometimes momentum is a fickle thing, and TCU's experiencing that in real time right now.
Yeah, it's brutal. That's brutal. The thing about it is a lot of people had texted me or contacted me and said, well, if it's COVID, they can't play. And if one person has COVID, they all have COVID. And I said, if they had COVID, they would just come out and say it. I go, nobody's hiding from that anymore. You don't have to hide and say that, hey, we don't have COVID. They would just come out flat out. Hey, you know what? We've got COVID. We can't play. We've got to sit out for a certain number of weeks. And I'm guessing it would be longer than 2 games, too, if that was truly the case. So, it's very, very unfortunate, man. Thank you for clearing that up for everybody, because, like I said, people were wondering, people were upset. They wanted to go see, because K-State, the women's got something going on here, and people are really getting behind it. Not that they weren't before, but I think they feel like they have a really special team, and they want to see them every opportunity that they can. So I appreciate you taking that time.
I mean, that's totally understandable, right? I mean, we all want to see our teams play. We all want to go out and be able to support them and see them be successful. And Kansas State, like you said, is having a fantastic year. I feel equally bad for Iowa State, who the Frogs were supposed to travel up there and play them on Saturday. That's a stadium that had 9,000 people in it for the last women's home game for Iowa State. They're losing that gate now. Right. And so, I mean, this is not an ideal situation any way that you cut it, but it's one that the medical staff at TCU said, hey, this is just a bullet that we have to take at this point.
Gotcha. Let's switch gears real quick here. Mike, Neil Brown, the man had 9 lives. Everybody, I think, at the end of not this past season, but the season before, thought that's it. That he's out, that he's going to be gone. They took the unusual approach of getting rid of the athletic director. You usually don't see the athletic director go and the coach stay. It's usually either they both go or the athletic director stays and they give him an opportunity to bring in another coach. That didn't happen. And then Neil Brown said, well, hold my beer, because we're going to throw out a season here. Not only am I keeping my job, we're thriving and we're moving forward. What happened? Because it looked like the snowball was going downhill, and he just said, no, hold on a second. We're going to go back up this hill. Tell us what happened.
So let's go back to the last chapter, I guess, the last page of the previous chapter here.
Okay.
They took some bad losses last year, some one-sided games that were over before they started, and one in particular to Kansas State. And it was right after they fired the athletic director. And if the writing isn't on the wall there, I don't know when it is, because just the way things are nowadays.
Right. Absolutely.
So the athletic director gets fired, and that is pretty much, back against the wall time, I think, if you're a football coach and the assistant coaches, and maybe to a lesser extent the players too. And they were down 14-0 like that in that game, and it never got better. And they ended up making it interesting in the end, because it just got to be like one of those 3rd and 4th quarters where the game's over, things happen. All of a sudden, a 35-point game becomes a 14-point or 21-point game, something like that. I don't remember the details, but the game was not close. And I wrote after the game that like the worst thing that Brown had done was he'd made the hard part easy. It's hard to fire a coach, especially a coach that you like and you want to win.
Right.
Make it easy. That's the big mistake. And he made the hard part easy. Well, it turns out it's actually hard to hire a coach or to fire a coach when you don't have leadership in your athletic department. I mean, who knew?
Shocking.
Right?
Breaking news.
So now I will say this. I think West Virginia gets lampooned sometimes, and I'm responsible for this as well, for doing things wrong and for doing things backwards or sometimes out of order. But like they definitely needed a change in their athletic department for just different reasons, like the way they schedule football games, the way that they were not behind name, image, and likeness. There's a whole bunch of reasons, and they made a change. And they got him in at the end of November. For whatever reason, they said, we're going to bring our coach back and we're going to do a 1-year evaluation. They could have said, we're hiring an athletic director and he's going to hire a football coach. They didn't. Now, the thing is that they really want Neil Brown to win here, but they also owed him like $16 million that they fired him last year.
Yeah.
That's pretty compelling. So yeah, they like him, they want him to win, but also there was a ransom. There really was.
Gotcha.
So he stays and they commit to him and they do some better work in NIL. They change some of their scouting and their evaluation process, and then they kind of switch gears on offense, and they go from air raid, where they had been since Dana Holgerson was here, and they blended into the Big 12, and they were not dynamic enough to differentiate themselves, even though they had good skill players from Will Greer to, like I said, Sills, Gary Jennings, Trayvon Wesco. They had players who should have been good in the air raid, and they were, but it wasn't good enough. And now they go like run heavy, dual threat quarterback. Let's be exciting on offense. Let's run the ball. And it worked. Caveat is they got really fortunate with their schedule. They just did. They're one of two teams that played all the 4 new Big 12 newcomers. The other one was Oklahoma State. And look how those two teams did this year as far as over exceeding relative to expectations. They both did. Now, they also won some games that maybe they shouldn't have, too. They got embarrassed once by Oklahoma, but they beat some good teams that had their numbers, like Texas Tech and TCU. They beat some teams badly that they should have beaten badly, like UCF and Cincinnati and BYU. So they didn't really have any of those step on the rake moments that they were prone to have in the past. They stayed out of trouble. And, their best thing is that they, like I'm from Ohio, so I can say this. They're like the Ohio driver who does like 55 miles an hour in the left lane and doesn't move, right? And they just get in that lane and they play their game, and it's annoying and it's hard to get past them. They get in the front and they don't let you by. So they had a style this year, which they had lacked. They were successful. They were really good on offense. They could be explosive, but they could also hog the ball. And the right time with players coming together, the right opponents in the schedule, they caught, when they were injured and they backup quarterbacks, when they got beaten badly the week before, like everything worked for them too. So, sometimes it's great to be good. Sometimes it's good to be lucky too. And they were a really effective combination of both this year. Lucky's not fair. Like you play the schedule, you don't pick your schedule.
Absolutely.
And they won the games they were supposed to win. And honestly, they're 9-4 at the end. They should have won 10 games. They lost on a Hail Mary that they really botched against Houston. But I mean, they should have won that game. Like they had a great drive to go up by a touchdown, with like 12 seconds left, and they lose the game because they just made a couple of small mistakes that happens once every 10 years to a team, maybe. And it just happened to be that was the day. So they had a plan. It worked. They caught some breaks. They were due some breaks for sure. But, I think a lot of credit goes to them for being good at what they sought to do that year.
Absolutely. On the flip side, TCU wasn't quite the year, Jamie, that they thought it was going to be. And it basically started week 1. Colorado comes into town. At Colorado, I mean, we could get into a million things on what we want to say about Colorado, but it just didn't start well, and it never seemed to get better. I thought they were going to get better, and the stone was going to get turned over, and it just never seemed to do that this year. Is that kind of the feeling of TCU fans?
Yeah, I think the learning curve here is that it's really hard to replace 8 guys that go to the NFL.
Absolutely.
And so it's shocking, right? Similar to the AD situation at West Virginia. It's breaking news here. And so I think one of the things that really challenged this TCU team this season was that there was not anybody who seemed capable of stepping up in moments where TCU really needed just a guy to go make a play. Last year, we remember all of the runs that Max Duggan made late in games to just will his team forward, or Quentin Johnston making a play, or Kendre Miller making a play, or on the defensive side, D. Winters making a play, right? There were just so many playmakers. That wasn't really the case for TCU in 2023. And so when there came a big moment, field goals against West Virginia, a late drive against Colorado, trying to make a comeback against Iowa State with a backup quarterback, and you get to within 10 points, but you can't quite get over the hump. There were just so many moments where everything that had broken TCU's way in 2022 broke against them in 2023. And that's just part of turnover luck over year over year, player luck year over year, just kind of how the cookie crumbles sometimes. And I think there was a really big learning year for Sonny Dykes as well, as far as, hey, how do I construct a roster that is capable of competing year over year? Because he did a phenomenal job of taking established players at TCU, retaining them in the midst of a coaching transition, supplementing in the portal, and then putting a really compelling product out on the field. Now, okay, well, we did that in 1 year. Can we do that in 2? Can we do that in 3? Can we do that in 4? I think that's the question that's still outstanding for Dykes at this point.
Gotcha. Well, guys, man, I want to thank both of you for taking time out of your day to join us on Big Insiders. We will have you guys back as many times as you guys have available, man. We appreciate it. We're literally just getting started with this thing. It's the 3rd show. We'll be moving forward. So I appreciate you guys taking the time today, man.
Anytime. Thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate it. Jamie,
absolutely. Likewise, Mike. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
At Synergy Financial Partners, the vision is to build the world's largest consumer financial education and empowerment company. Synergy doesn't just offer you a financial plan. At Synergy, the goal is to help you find your best financial future. Learn more at synergyfinancial.com.
Hey. All right. Hello?
I can't get it right, Brian.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. I think your camera, they got something going on with your camera. I think that's part of the
Darn
problem.
thing. Why? My camera hates me. It just
That's all right.
It's just wild. There we go. Now I'm blown out, but that's good enough.
Yeah.
Some questions here from the chat. Let's get it open here. Our friend K-Ned wants us to talk about how, back in the day, if you were transferring, you had to go to junior college. If you're going from Miami to, you could sit out a year, or you go play at junior college, and then,
Okay.
Or if you had some academic issues, you ended up at junior college.
Right.
But junior colleges have really been impacted from all these changes in the NCAA. Junior college football, let's be blunt, just isn't what it used to be, because it used to be filled with a bunch of D1 guys, whether they were missed in the recruiting process like you, or they, had to come down for a while if they wanted to keep playing. As a former JUCO player, how do you feel about this impact on JUCO football?
I mean, it absolutely impacts them tremendously, just for the simple fact, the pool that people, what would you rather have as a head coach? Head coaches, I know we don't look at it like this a lot of times, Fitz, it's their job. And if you do a bad job, you will get fired. So what would you rather do? Would you rather pick from Division I guys that are eligible, number one, have proven that they can stay eligible, number two, and maybe have some tape that they are Division I guys, or go get a JUCO guy where the stigma is something is wrong with them, that they had a bad attitude, got in trouble off the field, had bad grades, whatever the case may be? What would you rather stake your claim to? Well, before, you didn't have options like you have now, because if guys transferred in, they had to sit out a year, where at JUCO, they're just coming in and they're coming right into play. So yeah, that to me, that's where the biggest part of this on how JUCO guys are being affected, is because coaches don't want to take chances on, and they don't have to take chances on JUCO players anymore. That's the real thing. They just don't have to do it. If they did, they would, because all coaches still want to win. And so Coach Snyder did an outstanding job, because he's like, look, this is a way that I can go get guys to plug and play right now. They got to be the right guys, but we can go get those guys. Well, now teams are just doing it from other universities, and that's where the difference is. So,
I would contend that your recruiting class, not the 97 season as whole, but your Kansas State 1997 recruiting class, in which I can't remember, were there like 12 JUCOs? I mean, it was one of the biggest JUCO classes
Yeah.
ever signed by Power Five. And I remember hearing from people that, well, you can't win at this level using junior college players. There was such a stigma. I think what you guys did in 97 and 98 at Kansas State changed everything for junior college recruiting, and it made it more tangible. It kind of took the stink off of it, because there really was the amount of criticism Bill Snyder took for junior college players early on was just astonishing. And he proved that this can work. And I feel like the walls came tumbling down, and everyone started recruiting JUCO players at that point, to the detriment of Kansas State that had been taking advantage of that.
100% Fitz. You took the words right out of my mouth. It was a great thing for Kansas State, and then it was a detriment, because once people figured out, oh, we can win with junior college guys. Oh, all these guys aren't getting in trouble off the field. They're doing things the right way, and they're really good football players. Well, if they can get those kids to come to Kansas State, well, we can get them to come to Tennessee. We can get them to come to Alabama or LSU or wherever. We can get those kids. Now, we don't want to have to take a ton of them, but the ones that we want, we should be able to go get. And that's what changed, is that those schools started coming into Kansas JUCOs particular, because, again, I know they play JUCO football in Texas and California, blah, blah, blah. Kansas JUCO, and I'll say it forever, is the best in the country. I just believe that. Teams were coming in and taking those guys and bringing them back. And that's where or they were placing guys in certain JUCOs and then bringing them back. And that is where the detriment came in for Kansas State, because now they weren't, because before they could get the best and they could get as many as they wanted, and they would always get the best. And that's not the case anymore. Or it wasn't, stopped being the case, I should say. And it was a detriment. It just was.
Agree. Here's one from Abe, our friend. Has Brett Yormark, is he doing enough to promote how good the Big 12 is in hoops? I assume is what he means.
No, I don't think so.
I think it just takes care of itself.
Yeah.
You can't sell something that isn't legitimate.
Correct.
And if it is legitimate, it sells itself for the most part. I think the Big 12 could be this good in football, and you'd kind of have to tell people, hey, this is legit. But Big 12 basketball, now that's becoming the SEC of hoops. The respect's so high, the competition's so high, the national contenders are obvious. So it's, I think this is why he wants a Big 12 television contract for basketball only.
Right.
I mean, this has some more value than anyone else's basketball contract. And as far as anyone can tell from what the networks are doing, Brian, they're kind of handing over basketball to package with football on pennies on the dollar.
Yep. Well, here's the thing that I see is nationally, the Big 12 doesn't get talked about basketball wise, because nationally they want so bad for the Big 10 to be the best. And they want so bad for the ACC to be the best. And it isn't. And so, here we are out in the middle of America, and we have the best basketball conference, and it's not close. Let's not kid ourselves. It's not close. And they don't know what to do with themselves. So over time, and by the end of the season, everybody will be saying it. By the end of this, just give it time, people. I know it's frustrating, but by the end of the season, everybody will be saying that the Big 12 had the best conference in the country. It wasn't close. And it's only going to get better. It's only going to get better. So while I say Yormark hasn't done enough, and I think he probably can do more, you're also right, Fitz, because two things can be true. Things take care of themselves. And I think this is one of those cases where I just think it will take care of themselves, and everybody will see. You can't hide how good the conference is. You can't just sit there and hide, and you can't deny it, because if you're denying it, you'll lose all credibility. That's just what it comes down to.
Yep, indeed. Those two were good together. I think we should have them back together.
Yeah, they were. They were very good. Very good.
They came into the conference at the same time. Maybe they've got a club. Maybe we just invited their club onto the show.
Yeah.
Well, you're taking tomorrow off. I get to sit in for you. Any advice for me?
Yeah. just, I don't know.
I got to hit all the buttons and do all the talking. It's going to be a mess. I already messed. I'm only hitting the button today, and look what I did earlier.
Yeah, no advice, man. I just, number one, I want to tell you while we're on the air here is how much I appreciate this opportunity that you have given me. I love K-State. I love this conference. Every time I go home to Louisville, I brag to everybody. You don't know what you're missing. You need to watch more Big 12 football. You need to watch more Big 12 basketball. And it's just, I love this opportunity. When I got into this space basically a year ago, I mean, it's been a year that I've been doing this type of stuff. I love it. It's my passion. I love K-State. And I just can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity. So I hope the people will stick with me. I'll get better. I promise you. I'll get better. I'll get better. The nerves are kicking in, but I promise I will get better, man. And this is a great show. This is a great opportunity that you have created here. And I think it's going to be informative for everybody because the people that we're having on, Fitz, they've been on their game. They've been on their game. So
yeah,
I look forward to many, many more of these every single day.
First of all, you're doing a great job. Second of all, I'm scrolling your own channel right there. And if you are just a kind of a general sports fan, Big B does his own thing on his own channel every morning with the live, just him dishing on different topics. It's really fun. So go check that out. And I've got an interesting pairing tomorrow. It is my friend Rob Sellers from Houston and my buddy Michael Swain from the KU side is out of pocket. He can't do it. So I'm going to have Ryan Gilbert on. How's that for lazy booking? I'm just going to have the K-State guy come on.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. We haven't had a K-State guy on yet.
That's true.
So we might as well do it.
That's true. He gets to be the guy. He gets to be the guy. And it just makes me feel happy because I give him crap the entire show.
Yes.
I'm good at that.
And he's a good sport about it too. He's a good sport.
He has no choice. I'm his boss. So when he catches sprays, he's like, thanks for shooting me, boss.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in today, man. And like I said, I will be gone tomorrow. Fitz is going to pick up the pieces and do a better job than I have, and I will watch and make sure that I get better for the next one. But until then, this is the Big Insiders.
This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.